are live. How's it going, everybody? A long time no see. It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest live show here on WardyNYM, where we are your number one source for all your Mets news, rumors, post-game shows, everything and then some, you name it, that we're covering both in-season and off-season long here on the channel. You guys have done such an amazing job with the endless support to kick off the new year as well. And trust me when I say that I know that this offseason has been beyond underwhelming to pretty much every single fan out there. However, today we are getting into the latest acquisitions for the Mets as they have brought back Ottavino on a one-year, $4.5 million deal. We're going to get into why exactly did this happen, what was the falling out party between the two clubs heading into the offseason, what has changed since then, are the Mets done adding to this bullpen? Recent reports indicate they are not. Are they going to add to the DH? Recent reports also indicate they're still involved in that market. So we're going to go over all the latest and then some, along with my further reaction and analysis on why the Mets brought back Ottavino for another season and plenty more. But before I do that, I want to shout out everyone first chiming in. Thank you all so much for being here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button for your boy. It's the easiest and best way to support the channel. Greatly appreciated. Last time I was talking to you guys, I was coming at you live from Madison Square Garden when I was at the Knicks game over the weekend. That was a lot of fun too, and honestly, I had a really good feeling that a move was going to happen with my luck. I'm out of town over the weekend, and the more I think about it, the past 2 or 3 things of significance really in this Mets news cycle outside of Jorge Soler has been while I've been on the road, funny enough. We saw the signing of Ottavino on Saturday, did a little video at MSG while watching the Knicks game in attendance. A week prior, when I was on the road heading to a Ranger game, or a week and a half so, in DC, we find out that the Mets are connected to Blake Snell, which again, still makes a little sense in my opinion. And then you also see, going way back even further, when Sean Manaea signed with the Mets, that early morning report. I didn't get to it until I started recording around like 7:30 in the morning while I was out of town in a hotel bathroom. So finally, we have a chance to break down more thoroughly the moves that have happened here. Because Ottavino is an interesting one. Big echo. Oh, my apologies, everybody. Let me try to fix that. Let me work on the fly. See if your boy can troubleshoot this bad boy. Give me 1 second. Check. All right, guys. Let me know. Is it still a big echo? Are we doing better now? Let me know. Let me know, guys. Let's see. Yo, Wardy, is it okay if I clip important information in some of your videos to make shorts for my channel? I'm really trying to grow. While I appreciate that certified random, I'd greatly appreciate that if you're going to start clipping my content on a fairly consistent basis. That is not something that I prefer to necessarily. Actually, you know, a part of me is like, I don't want to consent it for like monetary reasons, but at the same time, more exposure is not a bad thing. So, and you're clearly a good supporter of mine. So yeah, as long as just shoot me like an email or like a DM, kind of giving me a further idea of what exactly you'd be doing, I'm sure I would okay it. But I appreciate you asking first and foremost. Okay, we're all good now? Awesome, we're all good with the audio. So let's dive into this one, folks. I want to know, how's everyone feeling? Happy start to the new week. Happy Monday, everybody. We just had a long weekend. I was exciting when I was in the city for the entire time. It was a good one, but now let's get into the business. Let's talk about this move. I see Faja, Grant, Kish, John, PB, Frank, Ricky, Michael, all you absolute beauties. Dominic, all you OG John, all you OG members and loyal viewers on the channel. I really want to take a minute to break down this move. So, of course, you guys saw my initial reaction. Don't steal content like Jenny. If you know, you know. Shout out Jenny Mets, my man Grant, for being in the chat. Best fan account covering the Mets on Twitter. Make sure to follow him if you haven't already. He's already at, what, like 60,000 followers? He's an absolute stud. But now let's talk about Ottavino. My initial reaction when I saw this news was not shocked, okay, not underwhelmed, kind of like, okay, don't love it, don't hate it. That's what the move is. So, Ottavino, for those that are questioning their, scratching their head, why haven't the Mets done more moves for their pen than what they have? Is Ottavino the end-all, be-all for their bullpen? Is he their setup man? These are all great questions. And my initial reaction then was, of course he's going to be the setup man, but at the same time, recent reports are indicating that the Mets definitely are still in the market for another lefty reliever, specifically Wandy Peralta, that we talked about a lot on the channel as of late. Jake Diekman is another name that hasn't been reportedly connected. but is someone I would personally keep a close eye on because Diekman, again, fits the bill as a crafty lefty that can get you quality outs. His walk rate, though, unlike Wandy's, has been consistently horrendous like every single year, versus Wandy's was just pretty bad last season, but that was more of an anomaly. Had a 5 walks per 9 last season, solid K per 9. Again, Wandy gets a lot of creative outs, but we know that the Mets seem like that they want to do more here. And even if they're working with the presumed $10 million or so that they're working with, you still got $5.5 million left. Is that enough to potentially get you Ryan Stanek? Maybe. I'm not sure. It might be out of price range. Is it enough to get a Wandy Peralta? I'm not sure entirely either. But what I am sure of is that it appears that this supposed around roughly $10 million range, while that might be the target goal that maybe the Mets had at this point in the offseason, it's not a hard number. And Andy Martino of SNY referenced that himself when he first made note that, yes, this is a club that while they're a little limited in their spending, they, of course, can go above and beyond that. And the reason why this stems back to the Mets circling back to Adam Ottavino goes in hand with the penalty that the Mets have by being charged an additional 110% basically on every dollar that they spend for the ensuing offseason because of the tax ramifications. So what this means is the Mets spending $4.5 million on Adam Ottavino is actually quite a bit more than that. It's almost, we're looking at what, around double or so, if I can do math correctly. I probably can't because I'm a schmuck. Point is, though, is that by having this inflated tax, everyone is costing you pretty much double the AAV what you initially thought it would be because of said tax. So Adam Ottavino entered the offseason understanding there was plenty of uncertainty in the organization, from the front office to the coaching staff and everyone in between. He goes to David Stearns right as things first began. I remember when you first started doing videos, every time you posted, I was so hyped. Signed now. Yeah, I know. Things have changed quite a bit since then, Leo. Every time I go on, you make me think we signed someone when we didn't. I'm sorry. If it makes you feel any better, though, I really do not try to clickbait or anything like that. When the Mets sign someone, I start off with breaking news. Every single title, every single time. Mets sign so-and-so. Like when it first happened. That's what I usually do. But going back to the moral story here, we're all aware that Adam Ottavino approached the Mets to begin the offseason asking for different terms on his contract. In particular, Adam wanted less deferments and more guaranteed dollars because obviously today's dollar amount is potentially worth more than what the deferments would be in, say, half or a full decade from now when he would be getting them. So he approached probably a multi-year contract, a 1 year with a second-year option, to David Stearns. David Stearns pretty much politely declined. Fast forward multiple months, Adam Ottavino is continuing to step up and showcase himself in the SNY time slots that he's had pre-scheduled throughout the season heading into the offseason. So that's why you see Adam Ottavino on SNY quite a bit. And Adam has continued to voice, how much he's enjoyed being with the Mets, how much he enjoys the organization. Obviously, he would like to go to a place that has a great chance of winning at this point in his career, but he's also a New Yorker, and you could tell he's really, really liked his time in Queens. And I get the feeling right away that unless things fail miserably this year, which they certainly can, not only just in the case of Ottavino, but the club as a whole, I have a strong feeling that Adam Ottavino is going to probably finish his career as a Met at this rate. He's a New York native. He loves the area. He wants to be around here, wants to be comfortable. So I'm not sure exactly what changed between himself and David Stearns, but it appears that the contract that he has now, 1 year, $4.5 million, is a more guaranteed rate than what he was having previously when he opted out of his $6.75 million player option this offseason initially. So on paper, you're thinking, oh my God, this guy lost $2 million. But in reality, he's actually making more guaranteed money now. And let's factor in the New York taxation. You're automatically what? It's New York taxes, and you fellow New Yorkers know this very well, far more than me, as someone who doesn't reside in New York currently. Those taxes are the equivalent of like winning the lottery. It's almost like half your check, and it really isn't too much of an exaggeration when I say that. So Adam, and while he's getting 4.5, he's only netting really, a little bit over half that probably. And then you, of course, have to disperse things. So before you know it, it really isn't much. Point is, though, is that Ottavino clearly wanted to be here. And that is one thing that I greatly appreciate about this. If this was an Ottavino that, was like, I don't know where to go, that type of thing, I'm just like, if the Mets want me, then, it is what it is, whatever, then I wouldn't be feeling the same way. But he's been passionate about this organization. He has continued to be diligent in his not only respect, but his coverage of the club throughout the year while being a free agent is a crazy thing. He was just like openly pitching back to the Mets, verbally pitching through his SNY segments all offseason long. And now the Mets bring back a 1 year, $4.5 million. So why do I like this move, and what are my reservations with it? Let's get into that right now. But of course, I want to know your thoughts, reactions, comments, questions, and concerns here in the live chat. Thank you guys all so much, everyone first chiming in. Make sure to smash a like and subscribe button for your boy. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much in advance. Help us get to a couple hundred likes by the end of the live show. If we can finish the live show with 100, 200 likes, it would really mean a lot. People on replay continue to boost those numbers, and thank you all so much in advance. Why? That's why I live in Western Pennsylvania. There you go, Ricky. Exactly. Wardy, you're good. Maybe Leo should tune in more often to the live streams, then he would know more about what is going on. That's true. That's true. But regardless, I do want to share more here about Ottavino and why the Mets made this move, but also why I like it and my rightful criticism. So let's get the elephant out of the room, guys. We did a 8 bullpen targets video on the channel over the past 2 weeks, and unless the Mets land one of Stanek or Wandy, they're not going to land any of those guys. Now, granted, they were only reportedly connected to a select few, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is this is yet another offseason where there's guys that, you know, us fans can have pleasure and take time and really evaluate in the free agent market what guys we think makes sense for the team, not just based on, you know, fan preference, but like the stats. And I'm not just talking baseline numbers. I'm talking like a lot of statistics that go into these things in evaluation, in high leverage and low leverage situations, who are the best, velocity, breaking pitches, all these things. And Adam, I truthfully wrote off. I did not expect a return until we saw the reported connection over the past week. The Mets are linked to Aroldis Chapman, who signed mere hours later with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Hector Neris, who has since signed with the Chicago Cubs, and then Adam Ottavino. So the Mets bring back Ottavino, and I guess a big question that a lot of people have is, what Adam Ottavino are we getting this season, right? Well, of course, David Stearns and the Mets have a comfortability level where they think Adam can go back to being that nice setup guy for them this year. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that Ottavino in 2023, some of the biggest hiccups he had last season can certainly be avoided to a degree if he's utilized in the proper way. And that's a big question. Is Adam Ottavino going to be utilized in the proper way? Adam Ottavino, as we look at his numbers here, shout out to Fangraphs as always for providing the great statistics. In his first season with the Mets, a 2.06 ERA, a 2.35 expected ERA, and a 2.85 FIP. What does that tell you? What Adam Ottavino can control is really not far off from what his baseline ERA is. Had a roughly 11 K per nine to a measly 2 walks per nine, which is fantastic. The lowest walk rate that he had in his career since the 2015 season. That's a really long stretch. Ottavino's first year with the Mets is a success. Home run rate .82, not great, but not terrible. As a true setup man at Edwin Diaz, being the guy that isn't known for the overwhelming fastball, but known for the nasty sweeping slider, those off-speed and breaking pitches are a nice balance as a setup man to then go into the flamethrower that is Edwin Diaz. That 2022 season was magical for a lot of Mets, including the likes of Adam Ottavino. Then as we fast forward to, of course, their last season, why did things take such a turn for worse? It was a cultivation of a lot of things, obviously, but it was headlined by Edwin Diaz being out before the season even began. It completely changed the structure and the implementation of the arms in said bullpen, and because of this, David Robertson came out. He was the closer until he was traded. Adam Ottavino was very much still the setup man, but something Adam faced last season that he didn't have to much at all in 2022, because we were, truthfully, we were privileged to have the type of outings that we had from a lot of our guys that are pitching in both rotation and bullpen in 2022. In 2023 was the lack of depth. The Mets had no depth whatsoever. We were pitching effing Denny Reyes in the first month or so of the season. Like, this is ridiculous. You should not be doing this. So because of this reason, Ottavino had to be utilized far more than he was accustomed to, work quite a bit. And I know if you look at his numbers, you're thinking, okay, he actually pitched 4 less innings in 2023 than he did in 2022. 66 games apiece, 65 innings in the first year, 61 in the second, and the numbers, of course, favored him in year one. What stood out the most here? It was his usage on back-to-back days. By a show of hands, how many of you fellow fans remember Adam Ottavino being utilized on back-to-back days and signed big time thinking, dear God, Buck, why? I understand we don't have a deep pen, but why are we bringing Adam in this situation right now, especially if there's a runner on base? That's automatic. If the guy's on first, he's already at second. Adam Ottavino's ability to get runners out from first to second is as good as Noah Syndergaard's. Might I add, that is not a compliment. That's one of the worst parts of his game. He has such a slow release point and windup that, again, if you're having the speed of like a true speed demon out here, whether it's I'm trying to think of a good runner. Just Ronald Acuna Jr. might get first to third that easily, right? But in all seriousness, Ottavino on back-to-back days was horrendous, especially giving up the long ball. Ottavino's walk rate jumped in 2023, which isn't all that shocking. And when he did have runners on, he was absolutely horrendous. So out of a good portion of the runs that Adam Ottavino gave up this season, most of them, as a matter of fact, were utilized in high leverage situations. So you also have to wonder, you also have to think to yourself of what he was charged with. Okay, does Adam make sense to be the go-to, the lockdown 8th inning guy again? I think in moments, Adam absolutely should be, but as long as the Mets not only do their due diligence, but actually land an external reliever, one of a Ryan Stanek, a Wandy Peralta, a Jake Diekman, somewhere a Phil Maton, someone that falls in that category, and I think we're cooking. I think if the Mets make one more solid bullpen addition, I have a lot of optimism for their pen heading into the season, and I honestly have a lot of optimism with guys like Jorge Lopez. I think Jorge Lopez is going to set up games for Edwin Diaz at times this year. Not all the time. He's not the guy that we need to be dependent on, but it also wouldn't shock me if Jorge Lopez becomes not only this flamethrower that he already is, but gets his command right, and there's this amazing 1-2 punch with Edwin Diaz, even if you get somewhat similar looks because they're arsenals. Point is that the Mets have options here, and it would be foolish of them, in my opinion, to give this full commitment to Ottavino again when the guy isn't getting any younger. Literally, he's at 38 years of age right now, right? He knows he's basically taking his career on a year-by-year basis now. So when you evaluate everything with how this current pen construction is, you're led with the reasoning of saying, okay, Adam Ottavino, I don't mind the return. Let's just make sure we're smart about how we implement him. If we're going to utilize him in high leverage situations, hopefully more often than not, we can put him in the best situation to succeed versus one where, say, there's 2 guys on, less than 2 out, and automatically we're going to give up a couple more runs, even if they're unearned. You just know it's going to happen because Adam has had a lot of problem, not only handling runners on, but also dealing with runners on that he implemented himself via walks, via singles, doubles, whatever it may be. So Ottavino, as a whole, I don't hate whatsoever. I think this is a nice pickup for the pen. Not my favorite by any stretch. There are plenty of guys I would have preferred more than Ottavino, but given the price range, his familiarity of Queens, his understanding and great success of already setting up Edwin Diaz just 2 years ago, I like the idea of him coming back and having similar success, who again has a 2.6 career ERA with the Mets across 2 seasons. But if we look at his 2022 numbers, guys, and don't get me wrong, this entire show is not going to be on Adam Ottavino. We're going to shortly transition from Ottavino into what is the latest on the Mets news or rumor front and what is next for them. So stay tuned for that here shortly. But Adam Ottavino's 2022 percentiles were tremendous. He was one of the best relievers in baseball, one of the best setup mans in the game at the time. Again, just look at everything. If except for chase rate and fast, the only thing that he didn't have on his side was chase percentage through Savant in 2022. Everything else, he's pretty much in the, low to high 70s and a lot of high 90 percentiles, especially in average exit velocity. No one, and I mean no one, hit Adam Ottavino hard whatsoever in the 2022 season. He was so good at inducing soft contact for his outs. Then we fast forward to 2023, and things take a turn in a negative direction because of this back-to-back implementation. Not a strong command, again, isn't getting any younger. His fastball velocity continued to dip. It actually took from 2023 and 2022, where he's averaging 94.4 to a 92.6 in 2023. So again, the fastball velo is going to continue to slowly but surely tick down. The average exit velocity went from being in the 99th percentile in 2022 to a measly 57th percentile in 2023. That's a significant gap. This guy goes from giving up no hard contact to giving up hard contact just a little bit less than league average. Chase percentage, 23 percentile. Horrendous. Could not get nearly enough guys to chase the slider. Whip percentage, 50 percentile. K percentage, 53rd percentile. Walk percentage was very improved in 2022, back down to 15 percentile in 2023. Barrel percentage was low, which is good. 95th percentile, which means he wasn't giving up a lot of barreled baseballs, but he was still inducing hard contact. Ground ball percentage and extension was still elite, but the hard hit percentage was down below league average. So what these things tell you again is that Adam, if he can just be utilized properly and hopefully a little bit less of a degree on the leverage aspect this season, then the Mets may have themselves something here where you can get hopefully an Ottavino that's been giving you that mix of a production, whereas first year the walk rate was down, the K per 9 was up, the ERA was beautiful. The second year, the K per 9 a little down, the walk rate jumped by double, right around a 4 walks per 9, and then you look at the expected numbers, we're a full run and a half or so more than the year prior. So just some little things that he needs to work on, but Ottavino, he's a crafty righty. He's been in this game for a long time. He knows what it takes to win in New York especially. I love the fact that he's a New York native and he embraces what it means to be a Met, understands his ballpark very well. I'm not opposed to this pickup again, but just understanding the pros and cons I think is very important too, because it's not an Adam Ottavino that I have the utmost confidence in can come in there in high leverage situations, because he proved to be anything but reliable in those same situations this past calendar year. And while I think you can write off some of those situations based on, the impact of Edwin Diaz's downfall and what it had on the pen, I don't think you can write them off entirely either. So just things to make note of as fellow fans with looking at this current construction of said bullpen. What are we liking? What are we not liking? There's just plenty question marks. Guys need to prove themselves like any other year, right? So Tingus, thank you for $2 donation. Tingus says, can't believe we're going another year without a real DH. Actually, Tingus, this is a great way for us to pan from talking about Adam Ottavino into now talking about what is next for the club. Because, little echo, I apologize if there's an echo, guys. But to expand further, the Mets, we know, have been connected to multiple guys. Wandy Peralta is a guy that I think would do wonders for this bullpen. We have talked extensively about Wandy on the channel already. 2.8 ERA last year, 5 walks per 9. Expected numbers weren't great. 2022 numbers, just like Ottavino, was one of the best relievers in all Major League Baseball. Is Aaron Boone's bulldog. He utilizes him in basically any which way possible that he needs him. Low leverage, high leverage all the time at big spots in playoffs. Wandy has gotten a lot of huge outs for the Yanks and also has some nice velo on his fastball too. Sits around 96, 97, 98 on the heater. That nice little 1-2 punch with him and Brooks Raley more of the soft tosser, the slow, the breaking pitch, this off-speed type pitcher, to then another lefty but has more flame on that fastball. Nice different looks. One lefty to another. I would love that in this Mets bullpen. I really hope the Mets can go out and land Wandy Peralta and pry him away from the Bronx. It might be easier said than done, but Wandy is one of those exceptions in this current free agent market where there aren't nearly as many relievers as I liked as there currently are. However, I think Wandy in this pen can be huge. That can help Adam Ottavino big time with the leverage situations. Basically, between Wandy and Ottavino, if you bring in Wandy Peralta, you in any high leverage game, you can basically kind of go back and forth between Wandy and Adam. Ideally, you would like to only utilize one of those guys in an individual night. You don't want to have to utilize both of them in the same nights constantly, because those are guys that profile similar in how they can impact the bullpen in later innings. They're not guys that if they're both pitching the same game consistently, it's probably not a good thing, or it means that there's injuries happening, right? So, which is also in itself still not a good thing. But I do see a donation here from Drew, so let's address that, then go forward. Do you think the Ghost Fork will be a little less effective this year because players have seen it now and we will watch more replay on it? I think it will be a little bit less effective, absolutely, because players have seen it. But I think split finger as a whole is going to spike this year. Headlined by a guy that's been working on his, his split finger / forkball, his spork, if you will, Tyler McGill. Big Drip McGill has been in headlines of recent that I plan to discuss more in the near future on the channel. Tyler McGill has been working on that splitty, and it's been deemed by people in the Mets organization as already an elite caliber pitch. So McGill, another guy that's going to be trying to help this Mets team in any which way possible, has a big spring training. He's got to step up for his case too, because McGill had a poor spring last year, could not command his breaking ball or that zone for that matter, and it really hurt him. This year, I'm really excited to see once we get down to spring. I'm sure I'll get a chance to hopefully meet Tyler again, maybe get a quick interview if he's interested. If not, no worries, because he's very laid back from when I met Tyler. Very nice, but just very chill, easygoing. And split finger usage is going to be actually uptick this year. So while it might hurt Senga a little bit, I think he's going to be very productive still. Pitchers are starting to realize that splitties at the MLB level don't have the exact wear and tear on their elbow that they initially thought would be the case when this started to become prevalent over the past decade especially. So splitties are being worked on quite a bit this offseason from everything I'm seeing. But now I guess the question is, okay, this splitty, that's something that Kodai Senga, yeah, he might not have the same amount of success with the Ghost Fork next year, but I don't think it's going to be anything drastic. I think as long as Senga stays healthy, the world is his oyster. He has one of the best swing and miss pitches quite literally in all Major League Baseball. It is a top pitch in Major League. It is that good. And he's a top pitcher in Major League Baseball too. He's a Cy Young caliber pitcher that the Mets got on a really nice contract right now, which I'm very happy about. So we talked plenty about him there. I want to get into not only about Wandy Peralta that we briefly discussed, but also Jake Diekman. Jake Diekman, Ryan Stanek. Ryan Stanek, we've highlighted quite a bit. Ryan Stanek, for those that don't know, that haven't checked out the previous content somehow, is another wily, huge head case reliever. Not head case in the sense where he'd be toxic in the clubhouse. Head case in the sense he's like Mad Max, where he just lets it all rip on the mound and he will go absolutely bad shit crazy. He does not care if you were a fellow player talking to him. He does not care if you're an ump. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a rat's ass if you're the opposing manager. You talk shit, he's going to dish you back and he's going to let you hear it. Especially if you were in the wrong and you ended up speaking too soon, he is not going to hold anything back. Ryan Stanek, as I mentioned, has been truly a tremendous reliever. A 4 ERA this past year, but in 2022 had his breakout year, just like Hector Neris that we saw this year with a 1.7 ERA. Stanek had a 1.15 in 2022, a 3 expected ERA. Again, K/9 was down by a full strikeout this year, went from a 10.2 to a 9.06. Walk percentage did go down. That was actually the second best walk rate in Stanek's career this season at 3.73. So while the walk rate isn't the best thing, it's not horrendous, and the guy touches 100 on the gun. Think of, just to give you a quick example, to put it in simple terms, think of a Jorge Lopez with far more consistency. Just to put it in the simplest terms, that is how you can view Ryan Stanek. Flamethrower, has multi-pitch mix, gets solid swing and miss. Lopez is more of the strikeout pitcher when he's right, but Stanek, again, also has that overwhelming fastball where he does get a nice amount of swing and miss. So with him, it's also about contactability, making sure you're keeping that down, the walk percentage, those types of things. But again, would be another really, really nice get for this bullpen that I personally wouldn't scoff at whatsoever. Now, aside from Ryan Stanek, we do have Jake Diekman. And the reason why I want to headline Jake Diekman here for a minute before we get on to bats and just the latest in the rumor mill. Outside that, yes, I know there's been a scandal. Not a scandal, but an unfortunate reality that a lot of us know already. But you guys know the international free agent signing period? Yeah, the Mets have been under investigation, unfortunately. Just has been the case with most teams, actually. A lot of teams in Major League Baseball right now are being investigated because there's a lot of guys that are committing to teams that aren't of age. They're not the age that they claim that they are. We're literally dealing with these scene out of bench warmers where the guy goes up, hands his ID, his birth certificate with like a $5 or $20 bill in there, and it says I am 12 with his face on it. When he's got the 5 o'clock shadow, he's hammering drinks and he's smoking throughout the game. It's unfortunate, but this is a reality in the DR, and these people do this a lot. When I say these people, I mean a lot of these young athletes, either because they were manipulated by their friends and family, they were maybe manipulated by people that were actually scouting them, because it's I got to be honest with you, the prospect of scouting young, less than 18-year-olds, minors, in a separate country, there are a lot of question marks that arise with him. There's shadiness that goes on. There's illegal activity that goes on as well, including what the Braves did with guys like Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna Jr. They illegally scouted those guys. They went through the whole process and everything. So the Mets, one of their biggest commitments, and then I'll get on to Jake Diekman here and talk about bats. The Mets' biggest commitment outside of Giovanni Rodriguez was the 26th or so ranked shortstop prospect that the Mets ended up backing out on initially signing because he was older than they thought. So if, say, he was labeled as 17, he might have been, 19 or 20 for all we know. But it's this unfortunate epidemic that's been going on in DR for quite some time with these young athletes, and now it's on the pedestal. It is an absolute shit show there right now, unfortunately, with the amount of deception, the amount of lies going on, fabrication, and trying to cover up these things too. It's a damn terrible thing. First, we have to deal with the horrendous findings that we're seeing with the Wander Franco situation. And now we're seeing what a lot of us have already known, but put on a further pedestal in the public eye, the lack of structure when evaluating international free agent signing period for these organizations and not being able to properly commit to some of these guys because there is age fabrication. And that's a shady thing, man. It's a shady thing. Wardy, Knicks looking great this year. Yes, they are, Joseph. For those that don't know, guys, I do share my input on the Knicks every single week on the Knicks Media YouTube channel. Make sure to check him out. My man Richie is a huge Jets, Knicks, and Mets fan. Covers all the teams except for the Mets because the Mets is the hardest thing to do when you got 162 games in the season. It's not easy as a one-man show, but I will be back talking about the Knicks early Wednesday, after they're done with their back-to-back games, which, of course, is started tonight against the Charlotte Hornets. But shout out to my Knicks fans out there for sure. What is Juan Soto's real age, right? That's a good question. The international minor league system is pretty shit. It is. And I'm not going to sit here and accuse anything, but there are aspects to it that concern me on a moral level. There are things that appear to be morally not right as part of that process. But again, that's really getting on a tangent. Then that can be an entirely different discussion. So we talked, of course, there about what the Mets have been investigated on, as has been the case with a lot of other teams in the MLB. Now let's talk about briefly a reliever before I get on to the DH targets of this video. Because, guys, the Mets still want to add a bat. And when I tell you the Mets still want to add a bat, it is to the point that, truthfully, it appears the Mets really, really want a guy to kind of come around the range that they're looking for, because they like Mark Vientos a lot, and they're very adamant about seeing what Mark Vientos has this season. But I think that they're also very wary that one more bat of significance can significantly impact this team for the better this year. Both things can be true. Even with Mark Vientos' Fangraphs projections not being awfully far off from, say, JD Martinez or Justin Turner. Projections will only take you so far when evaluating young and inexperienced batters, especially. And for a Mets team that has had no structure in their DH since it became universal, I personally would have loved to finally see some structure there. Okay. Jake Diekman, this past season, for those that don't know, this is a giraffe neck Mark guy. Mark loves Diekman. He's always been on the Diekman train for at least a couple years now. Jake this past season with two different teams in 56 innings and 63 games, a 10 K per nine, a 6 walks per nine, a 3.3 ERA, and a 3.3 expected ERA. That's actually impressive. I love when the baseline ERA and the expected numbers are eerily similar, because that tells you that, yeah, he's not getting a shit ton of luck. He's doing good with what he can control. And similarly to Blake Snell, Jake Diekman has been this prime example of a reliever that has had a solid amount of success at the MLB level while never being able to command the strike zone. The guy has a 5.27 walks per nine. Do I personally want Jake Diekman? No. A big factor is the walk rate. I'm not a lover of it. Him in the high leverage situations, don't love it, but Diekman is just another wily reliever where you can get plenty of quality outs out of, but at the cost of how much he may be able to hurt you. Like, if Diekman could get down to a 3 walks per nine somehow, I think you sign him every single day of the week. That's what I say. But his inability, his lack of effectiveness to do exactly that we have witnessed ourselves as fellow baseball fans the past number of years, is why I have a decent amount of reservations with him. So Diekman, as we pull up his baseball savant numbers here in a second, because I want to see what he's got going. Before I do that, though, I want to shout out everyone else that's first chiming in live on a replay. We're just over a half hour of this one, guys. We're going to be running things for another 10 minutes, and then your boy's going to get out of here or so. But again, continue to smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. We're going to be back at you guys with new content more than likely tomorrow. I think we're going to get a rank top 5 or between a top 5 to top 7 video out tomorrow on furthermore on the guys that we're actually about to talk about now, the bats. And the reason why I want to do that is because the Mets are still in the market for said batters. And I think that's important to highlight. But something that I will like to also highlight about Jake Diekman is that expected ERA, a 2 percentile, expected batting average, a 94 percentile, fastball velocity, 97 percentile. So again, another lefty that can sit, mid-90s on the gun with the fastball. Don't hate that. Average exit velocity, 98 percentile. Why is that important, guys? Jake Diekman walked 6 guys per 9 innings last season, but this is why he had success. He did not, and I repeat, did not give up hard contact. 98 percentile, guys. Average exit velo was around 85 miles per hour off the bat of opposing batters. Chase percentage, shit. No one was chasing his pitches. Whip percentage, up 51%, just above average. K percentage, up 74 percentile. Walk percentage, down, worse than baseball, literally. 88 percentile in barrel percentage, up. 99 percentile in hard hit percentage, up. The guy gives up no hard contact. Ground ball percentage, 72 percentile, up. And that is Jake Diekman with his fastball, with the slide piece, the sweeping slider, mind you, the changeup, the sinker, and the cutter. And to emphasize sweeping slider, why this could also be a nice pickup for the Mets too, having a sweeper from the left side, the way that Sean Manaea has started to build, causes a lot of disarray. You can get a lot, and I mean a lot, of strikeouts that way. Get a lot of good turnout, a lot of soft contact, really, especially if you're getting on righty batters down and in on the hands that they can't pull enough, or especially lefty on lefty that they're just trying to chip away, and it's soft chopper to short for Lindor to toss to Alonso, and that's the out of the inning. There are aspects here to Jake Diekman that are certainly appealing. It's a bigger deal for relievers and starters, in my opinion. One, it's such a toss-up. It really is. I'd actually argue that it's the other way, funny enough. You know, I actually, it's hard because relievers, like, the issue with relievers and walk rate, it's like, there isn't. They're so fickle, you know? I emphasize this a lot, and I'll say it again. When the Mets signed Adam Ottavino for the first time 2 years ago, guys, you want to know what Adam's walk per nine was? A 4. First year with the Mets, a 2. David Robertson comes to the Mets off of a season with a 5 walks per nine, comes to the Mets, first year with the Mets, and only year with the Mets, looks like, because he's a Texas Ranger now, unfortunately. Wishing him the best with Jake and everyone else there. A 2. So, Germany Hefner has been able to get a lot out of these relievers that we've seen in recent years. I also think it goes in hand with just relievers being fickle. They're such a toss-up that, you know, if they're going to have a down year, you know they're going to have a good year next year, regardless of where they are for the most part. That's kind of where some of these guys find themselves falling in that category. But walk rate with starters definitely can hurt. And there's one man that I think of pretty often when I think of a starter that has been hurt by his walk rate. I present to you David Robertson. Not David Robertson, David Peterson. And actually, to further validate that reason, I'm going to look real quick what Peterson's walk percentage was before he ultimately went down for injury, because now he's out for the next year. David Peterson walk last year. Yep, there we go. I love when I'm right in that sense. Not in this case, though. 10K per nine for David Peterson this year, 4 walks per nine. He's been a career 4 walks per nine, actually, as a matter of fact. That's been a huge nemesis for him. If he can just get that command. Let me put it, if David Peterson had a 2 walks per nine last season, he doesn't have nearly as much of the struggles that he did early on, probably. And 2, if he did that more throughout his career, he's probably more of a staple in this rotation than what he currently is as a guy that we're just curious to see what he's going to look like once he returns from injury later into summer, right? So that's what I'll say about that. But guys, let's wrap up the show by talking about the most important things to many of you, and that is the Mets bat targets. Who are the New York Metropolitans going to target for bats? It's a great question. Well, we pretty much know the 3 guys that they have been reportedly linked to. That make a lot of sense. There's multiple other names out there too that I'm going to expand on, one of which the Mets have been connected to, and that's Gio Urshela. Another of which the Mets haven't been connected to, but I think he makes a lot of sense. But I'm going to expand on that more in the near future. That is Adam Duvall. That I actually, in one of my first, free agent target videos of the offseason, I had Adam Duvall in there. So I think Duvall can still make plenty of sense for this team. Even though that, yes, he's an outfielder, but given his lack of health and his power, put him in DH. Jorge Soler, Justin Turner, and JD Martinez was the latest on these fronts. Well, apparently the Blue Jays really want one of these 3 guys. Now we see John Morosi, everyone's favorite Toronto Blue Jays reporter, because of course he was on that flight there to Toronto. And by he, I mean Shohei Ohtani, wink wink. All jokes aside, Morosi did tweet today that the Blue Jays are very involved in the markets of JD Martinez, Justin Turner. We've heard reporting for a while, especially through Hispanic reporters, that the Blue Jays were looking like the favorite for Soler. For a while, I thought it was the Red Sox, and that fell through. The Mets have been connected, but to what degree? We've heard further reporting Since the year has started, all the reporting we've really heard is that, yeah, the Mets still want to add a bat. A week later, yeah, we checked in. The Mets are still interested in adding a bat. Oh, yeah, we checked in. Yeah, the Mets are still interested in adding a bat, for sure. And any of these guys, I think, would really do plenty for this team for 2024. But the reason why I'm emphasizing, especially like Justin Turner, for example, Morosi said he expects, to sign this week. I'm taking that with a grain of salt because John Morosi has proven to have a lack of credibility in his sources, or at least his lack of understanding on, when you're jumping the gun versus not. I hate people that are nothing reporters that act as if they have all this newfound information when in reality they don't. And we're supposed to ingest it as such because we're so desperate for information. Jorge Polanco has just been traded to the Mariners. There you go. Mariners fans, your second baseman for the 2024 not Metropolitan season, for the Seattle Mariners season is going to be, yes, Jorge Polanco. Or is he going to be your third? Wait, Polanco can play all over the infield, but I feel like he's more of a second baseman than anything else. That's a fun little move, though. Jorge Polanco. Sorry, guys, I was just double checking. There we go. Yep, second baseman Jorge Polanco to Seattle. That has just been confirmed from Jeff Passan. So, I don't want to get on that tangent because Polanco is a solid player, but nothing that I really need to expand on right now. Out of the bats that have currently been connected to the Mets, and if we're evaluating the Mets' lack of wanting to, spend a crazy amount on, even short, like they just don't want to spend a lot on guys in general right now because of the tax implementation, knowing that they have in a lot of ways a pretty set roster to their liking. Might not be to the fan liking, but the Mets have a lot of internal options, especially with some of these prospects that, hint, we're going to be doing a lot of prospect coverage on the channel really soon. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. It ain't going to be like rumor-worthy a lot, but prospect coverage is going to be more apparent on the channel in the near future, including, just maybe including some of your favorite prospects. So we're going to be having a lot of fun with that very soon. Be on the lookout for that in the near future, guys. But these bats, I understand the Mets' lack of willingness to not want to say go all in for certain ones, but especially in case of even like, a Jorge Soler, he just makes so much sense for this team. I think he's the Kyle Schwarber that the Mets missed out on a couple of years ago. The only difference, though, is that back then, that's when the Mets were in a win-now stage, which made it hurt even more for them to not really go all in for a DH, versus now, I can understand the appeal behind wanting someone like Mark Vientos to be getting consistent reps, because he might be the guy for us. Mark Vientos might just ball out and have a 20 home run season for the Mets at the DH position. Might be better for all we know. But you also risk the downside. And the potential downside by not adding a bona fide true DH, a Justin Turner, a Jorge Soler, a JD Martinez, an Adam Duvall, if you do not add these guys, the risk that you take is exactly what the Mets have done the past 3 years. By going to the trade deadline with an incompetent DH, a lack of consistency from, in this case, it would be Vientos and DJ Stewart, assumably. And then are you going to address it, or are you going to just let it sit and be underwhelming, depending on what your playoff status is, right? So it's a good question that the Mets have, but their continued willingness to seek the market, to be involved and have discussions with these players tells you that there is a price point that the Mets are looking for. And if things kind of fall into place, they're going to get a guy. It seems like they want him. I'll even go a step further. I truly think if the Mets fully want to commit to Mark Vientos to see everything he has this season, that it would have been written off weeks to months ago that the Mets are not going to be adding another bat, right? What has been the one constant that we have heard this entire time is that they're still in the market for a bat, that they're still interested. So that interest level, I think, tells me all I need to know. Similarly, the Mets have been interested in still wanting to add a starter, right? Things have died down on that front. I don't know how true that is, if that's still going to happen. I don't know how active David Stearns has been in the trade market. Things have been very, 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 very hush-hush in the public eye that we have seen over the past, number of weeks now. It has been a very underwhelming January. I mean, that's the reason why you guys haven't really seen as much content on here lately, because it's like there are topics that are not rumor-related that I'm going to be discussing this year, but I really can't at this point in the year, because it's not going to get nearly enough traction where people care enough, because a lot of fans are checked out right now. They're not really interested. A lot of fans don't even get interested until the season really begins. So a lot of the stuff that I would do more in the peak of spring training, I can't even really do right now, because the viewership I know will be down and it'll just get lost when I know they're good conversations and good topics. But the unfortunate thing is that we're just kind of stuck in this purgatory where there just isn't much going on. It's not just for the Mets, it's across Major League Baseball. Like, yeah, put the Polanco trade aside that just happened. Things have been pretty underwhelming for this free agent class as a whole, right? And these bats, while at least one that makes a lot of sense for this team, I think the Mets are just kind of left a lot of situation in the kind of this, this purgatory again, where you can make the valid reasoning as to why they should stay in-house, especially in a year where on paper they're not going to be the best club in their division. But at the same time, you can make the counter and saying, okay, all we are is just a move or two away in addressing areas of need, mind you, from making this team on paper a club where you can sit there and say, you know what? I know that we have plenty of uphill battles this year, and I know the team's going to be ever-changing, but with the depth we have in this organization, yeah, I could see the Mets go out and win 85 games. I could go and see them crack a wild card spot. As things currently stand, do I think it's possible? Yes. Am I optimistic? Not overly. But if the Mets, again, can land one more reliever, can land one of those bats, Gio Urshela doesn't have the power, but he has the contact ability, high contact ability, and unlike all the guys we discussed, can handle his own in the infield. So that's why it wouldn't shock me if the Mets ended up going a Gio Urshela route for a bat. That surprised some people, because that would still allow Mark Vientos to get consistent reps at DH. So as you fellow fans think about this and think about what the Mets should do, while I agree a power bat at DH is in the best interest of them, if they decide that they want to roll with Mark Vientos and DJ Stewart in the DH spot, it does not necessarily prohibit them from still adding another position player. Just might not be the one that you were hoping for or assuming, i.e. Gio Urshela, for example, i.e. possibly Adam Duvall, even though that there's been zero connection other than assumption hypotheticals on that point. So that is pretty much what I will leave you with at this point, folks. There isn't really too much more that needs to be dragged on or explained here. We got plenty of fun content coming at you this week, guys, and the works of a lot too, so that goes in hand with why things have been a little hush-hush. This is the time of year where all of us, fellow creators are getting things mapped out, currently getting spring training mapped out, because I will be in attendance for, upwards of a week. In March, very excited about that. We're going to be doing Mets coverage there, and along with collaborative coverage with a lot of awesome fellow YouTubers. Got some things working in the wraps regarding prospects, as I mentioned to you too. So my final takeaway from where the Mets currently stand and what this conversation is, Adam Ottavino, again, makes plenty sense for this team to return on this one-year deal. Him in the high leverage, I just hope it's lessened from last year. That's my main thing. That's my biggest thing. Lessen his usage on back-to-back days. Lessen the high leverage usage. Just so it doesn't need to be a drastic amount, just at least a little bit, where you're feeling a bit more comfortable when you're throwing him out there. Get a Wandy Peralta, get a Ryan Stanek, to a lesser degree, get a Jake Diekman. A Phil Maton would have loved, wouldn't be opposed to that. The Mets really seem like that they have their heart set on another lefty reliever and potentially one more bat. Who are those guys going to be? Hopefully we know already, because we talked about them, but for all we know, it could be a guy that we did not have on our radar whatsoever. The same way that no one had Jorge Lopez on the Mets' radar when they signed him to a major league contract early in the offseason, mind you. So just things to think about, and stay tuned, because we will again be having plenty of coverage here on the channel. Dominic, thank you so much for the support. Thank you guys all so much for the likes, the subscriptions, the donations. Really does mean a lot to me. Miguel Sano, if he's let go, no thank you, Ricardo. There's really no room. I'm taking Mark Vientos every day of the week over considering a Sano flyer. I also like to make that thing clear too. The only reason why I'm very adamant about the Mets adding to DH is two things. One, they've had no structure in it the past 2 years. It has been to their demise offensively, to having a lack of production around Pete, power-wise. And two, Mark Vientos is worthy of getting a nice stretch of reps. Do I think he's worthy of it more? Do I think he's worthy of it enough to warrant not signing a guy like Soler, JD, or Turner? Not entirely, no. But do I think he's worth repping every day and considering versus throwing Miguel Sano out there on a flyer? Absolutely. There's levels to this. I want the kid to play. unless it's because of those 1, 2, or 3 options. That's pretty much it. And if he does get limited playing time, at that point, the Mets do sign an external DH, then I hope that he can be utilized in various ways throughout the regular season, still on the club, or build up his trade value big time in AAA, as he will surely dominate. So that is what I'll leave you with. Thank you guys so much again. Stay tuned for consistent coverage. This is your boy Wardy signing out. Let's go.